I'll
All right.
time.
All right, who's doing time?
I'll Pat. I'll time.
All right, and Shirley just texted me and said the system is not letting her join the meeting.
Oh,
I can go ahead and if y'all will hold on a minute, she has our next part on the agenda. So hold on a second. I think we've all learned more about.
Shirley? Did
Go
you
ahead.
say Shirley?
Yes.
yeah.
She's on.
Yeah,
What?
he is now.
Well, I'm confused. I got a text from her, so okay. Thank you for straightening me out, Martha.
Okay.
Shirley,
All right,
we're-
Shirley,
Hello, everyone.
we're glad you're here, and we've introduced ourselves to each other, except for you. We've done that part for you, so if you just want to tell people who you are and then go to the reflection.
Sure. Hi, I'm Shirley Marks, and I am the co-chair for the Affordable Housing Task Force Committee of NOAH. And I'm sorry to be late. I had problems getting in Zoom. But anyway, I'd like to share this reflection with everyone. And I think it's so appropriate to now, as you know, we have accomplished as a task force, NOAH, we've made some progress and we've reached some goals, but also I know there's other goals that we need to continue to reach for affordable housing. And I want to share this quote. It says, after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. And this is a quote by Nelson Mandela. So with that, we have more hills to climb in order for everyone in Nashville that can afford housing.
Thank you, Shirley.
All right, Mike, I think you're next on the agenda.
Just very briefly, I think all of you know that we have a banquet. The NOAA fundraising banquet is coming up Thursday evening. And I might say that our goal was 400 tickets, which was quite ambitious. We're at 396. Just wanted to throw that in. And we can go over it just a tiny bit. So if any of you all have not registered, really want to come to the banquet, please do. In just a minute, I'll put a link in the chat so you can do that very easily. But I want to say that Paulette Coleman and Cheryl Major, who's on here, and Reverend Thompson, and several of the rest of you have been working very hard on our banquet committee. It's been just amazing to see all this stuff come together. We're honoring Congressman Jim Cooper and State Senator Brenda Gilmore at the banquet. We have a wonderful speaker coming in from Memphis, a guy named Justin Pearson. He's a young guy, 28 years old, and he organized to stop a pipeline from coming through an African-American neighborhood. There's going to be a very dangerous thing there, and he's a great speaker. We've also got some wonderful music. Cheryl, for some reason, I'm forgetting the wonderful man's name. Anyway, it's he's a member.
Wendell Bixby.
Thank you, Wendell Bixby. I've been telling everybody about Wendell Bixby, and then I can't remember his name. That's not good. But it's going to be a really great thing. I think this is going to be our best banquet ever. I don't remember us being at this point to this level before. So I just wanted to let you all be reminded of that. And like I said, I'll put a link in the chat so you can buy a ticket if you have not. And we would love to have everybody there.
Just a reminder, it begins at 6:30. What time do the doors open, Mike?
I think the doors will open about 6 o'clock. We had suggested a little earlier, and the convention center suggested 6, just because they thought it would work better for us.
What about parking? Do we pay for parking
Nope, that's gonna,
or do we have to?
you will get an email today. My goal is explaining that, but we'll have parking vouchers that NOAA's paying for. You're already paying for the ticket, and we didn't think it was right to make you pay for parking also. So you'll get vouchers as you come in the door.
Thank
Yeah, I think it's Kay's turn again.
Okay. So congratulations, and a huge thanks goes out to Paulette and all those who are involved in making this banquet be what it's going to be. I know it was a ton of work, and we're excited about Thursday night, and I'm grateful for the hard work that you all have done around this. I met a gentleman who works with MDHA, Paulette, when I was canvassing just in a neighborhood, and he says he's coming. He's one of the seats at the table with Dr. White. So
Wow.
he's excited.
Great.
That's pretty good.
Thank
His
you.
name's David. Next up, we have Shannon and Nathan. And Shannon hails from Minnesota. And Nathan, I think Nathan, correct me, but you're from Oregon, am I right? And they have been in Nashville for how long?
Just about a year, almost a date.
Just about a year. And what brought them here was the National AmeriCorps program. And they gave a year of service to our community, working particularly with something called the Promise Zone neighborhoods. And so they have done just a tremendous job this year around the topic of evictions and doing great data and data analysis around this. And they have some good information to share with you. I think you'll have a lot of questions around this. I know this is of particular interest. And so I look forward to what they have to say. And I'll let you two get started. And then if you need to share screen, just do that if you need to. Michael, make sure you can do that, Nathan and Shannon. And then hold your questions till the end, and I'm sure they'll be glad to answer them. So I'll turn it over to you, Nathan and Shannon.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Oh, spotlighted me. Oh, gosh.
There you are.
All right. My face is too big. I will share my screen as quickly as possible. All right. Let's see what's in. Oh, computer's a little slow. Okay. Just give it 1 second. Maybe. All right. Can you see the screen that says the Promise Zone on it?
Mhm.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background information first around what the Promise Zone is. And then Nathan will kind of dig more into the data itself. The Promise Zone, so first I'll just introduce our team, myself, the Affordable Housing Coordinator, and Nathan. And then Welton is our Vista leader. So he's kind of the one that we've been reporting to and receiving oversight from over the last year. And he actually is a Nashville native. So he's our one native on our team to the community. So his perspective has been extremely valuable. And then just a little bit of information. So the Promise Zone is part of a federal designation that started during the Obama administration. There are 22 Promise Zones throughout the country, and these are a mix of urban, rural, and tribal areas. And just they're basically areas of condensed or concentrated poverty. And so the Obama administration launched this program to help alleviate poverty in these areas. And then AmeriCorps stepped in as a way to partner with the Promise Zones and staff the work that they wanted to do. So the Nashville Promise Zone is a region of about 46 square miles. It's one of the larger Promise Zones in the nation. So to kind of make that a little bit more manageable, the Promise Zone is divided into 6 subzones, and each of those have a captain, a nonprofit organization that kind of is the captain of that area and that we have more close communication with. I will say that kind of the work of the Promise Zone itself does adapt and change year to year, just kind of as the needs change. And so we have the subzone division into these 6 areas, but I'll actually explain more about the topic of work that we do that goes beyond just the geographic regions. So our work is divided into 4 work groups: affordable housing, crime and education, jobs and economic development, and infrastructure. So these are just, very obvious pressing issues that our community is facing. And so the Promise Zone seeks to convene stakeholders and organizations and advocates in monthly meetings to collaborate and kind of identify overlap of work and just increase that communication across organizations that are doing similar work in the community. And each of these work groups kind of has varied, but typically they have representatives from MDHA, who is our overall host organization. And then we have some local government representatives, oftentimes many nonprofits, and sometimes some businesses as well. But this is really the heart of what we do, is that place to convene and increase collaboration. So even though we have the different subzone areas, really we focus our work around what issues need to be addressed. And if that goes beyond the actual zones of the Promise Zone, that's fine. We're more focused on these different community issues. So the affordable housing work group is really where this eviction data has started. Our kind of goal right now is just to educate, sustain, and preserve affordable housing options in the Promise Zone, and then deploy resources as we are able to through our partners. And an area that we identified in our previous VISTA year was that there really wasn't anyone collecting data on eviction cases being filed. And what we, I'll stay here for a second. What we learned was that this is public information that's easily accessible. And that was kind of what started this initiative to collect the data. So before I get ahead of myself, I will turn it over to Nathan. He's really been the one to lead kind of the organization of the data and some of the analysis. So I will just let him take it from here.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'll just jump right into it. First, I'd like to talk a bit about what actual data we've been collecting. So we are collecting detainer warrants, which the rate of detainer warrants being filed in the circuit court system. And a detainer warrant is the first step in the eviction process. So when a property owner or landlord decides they want to contest to have back fees paid or possession of the property, they will file the detainer warrant, and that will notify the resident that the eviction process has started. So these are the beginning stages of the eviction we're tracking. And here in this bubble, we can see that 37013, 37211, and 37115, these are consistently 3 highest zip codes that we have detainer warrants being filed in. And this is from January to June. So this is what we've collected this year so far. And we can see that just under 50% of all cases are filed in these 3 zip codes at 48%. So we have the majority of cases just in these 3 areas. And if you want to move to the next slide. Yeah. So just to kind of give you an idea of like how drastically the difference is between these 3 zip codes. Here's a bar graph from one of our spreadsheets, and this is from January. So you can see that Antioch 37013 has 143 cases, and just down by Madison is 85 cases. So you can see a very big drop off as you move throughout the Promise Zone or the zip codes, and you can see that there is a large concentration in these 3 zip codes. And if you want to move to the next one. Now here is, sorry, everyone's like, okay. So here is the population rates for the 37115 and 37013 compared to Davidson counties is, so the county-wide detainer warrant rate by population is just under 1%. It is 0.76%. And so we can see that even accounting for population differences in between these two zip codes, they're not that much different than the overall rate for Davidson County, and they are significantly higher than surrounding areas. And now looking at some historical data for 2021 and 2022, just to kind of give an idea of pre and like post pandemic numbers or post renting protection numbers. So in 2020 and 2021, we saw a pretty big decline in the number of cases being filed. In 2020, we saw just 6,000 cases being filed. And in 2021 and 2022, we've seen 7,280. So we're on our way up to a pretty big incline in the number of cases that are being filed. And if you want to go to the next slide. And we also want to talk about who are filing these cases, so we get an idea of like where they're coming from. So these are 4 private property management companies that operate inside of Davidson County and Nashville. The 2 on the far right, Elmington and Freeman, are both local or headquartered private property companies here in Nashville. And Elmington has 40 properties and Freeman has 29. So you can see that they are mostly focused here in Nashville. And Greystar and GVA are both out of state. Greystar is an international private property management company. GVA is headquartered out of Texas. And we can see that they account for quite a significant chunk of the cases we see filed. Altogether, we're seeing about a little less than 20% of all cases being filed out of over these January to June numbers. So we can see Elmington by itself accounts for 6% of cases. So we can see that of cases being filed in Davidson County, they are coming from a lot of these like high concentration business type private property companies. And that's where we're seeing like one of the most rates of detainer warrant being filed is with these private property companies. And that's kind of like the breakdown of any information and data we've collected so far. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And I can be more in depth with any, if one thing sparked your interest, I can definitely dive more in depth. That was kind of an overview of the information that we've gathered here.
Yeah, I do have a question. Do you have any data on by lessor or rentor or whatever the term is for these people? What percentage of their total units that they have are they submitting a detainer warrant for? In other words, do we have people who, you know, philosophically and behaviorally wise are quicker to press the button and try to get rid of a tenant?
Mm-hmm. So I can't speak exact numbers because I don't have those, like, I don't currently have those numbers with me. So I can't talk about like percentage of units that are being evicted from these property management companies, but I can say that it has been reported with Greystar in particular, Freeman Webb and Elmington. These are all private property management companies that see, what do you call it? See property as an investment and not necessarily a long-term, and not necessarily a long-term one. So they buy up a lot of properties in the area, will find ways to cut costs, cut maintenance costs, drive up rents. So that way they can make as much money flipping a property as they can. So they'll buy it cheap and then find ways to increase value by cutting costs and raising rents. And then they will quickly sell that back to the market at an inflated rate. So they're not looking to do long-term investments. And these are companies that have a recorded history of doing evictions at a higher rate. I can look at some of the other data that we have and we can see that overall, the number of cases we see filed for any one particular property is somewhere between 1 and 5. It's not normal to see it go much higher than that for any particular property, but these ones can come up to 46 a month I've seen it as high as like 50 a month. So these are companies that are filing at a much higher rate than those around them.
Did any of y'all look at what happened once the, we call it detainer was, detainer warrants were sent out? Do we know what percentage of them or how many of them ended up in Rachel Bell's court?
Unfortunately, we don't have that information either. To keep it as up to date as we do in like month to month, we don't have the time or resources to go back and comb through the CaseLink website to find how cases have been closed and how they operate, because it takes weeks for these cases to go through the system. And it also, even once they're through the system, getting it uploaded onto the site that we have access to, there's a lot of time lag. So to keep the information up to where we have it, it's difficult for us to kind of collect that information.
So
beyond that,
who's doing that? Who's do any of us know where to go to see how many of these are ending up in Judge Bell's court?
A good resource to look at would be the Legal Aid Society for Tennessee, Middle Tennessee. They do a lot of like in court work, and they'll have a much better idea of the actual cases that do end up in evictions. I can say I was at a presentation they led here recently, and they are talking about seeing like hundreds of cases like filed in a day, and most of them end up in default. So they're decided against the person being evicted because they don't have the resources to like find an attorney, or they just don't realize the severity of the case.
But they don't get there. They don't even get to Judge Bell's court.
Correct. They don't show up to their court date, and it is filed against them automatically. It is filed in default, to be more precise.
I have a question, and it's about the zip codes with the highest. And we always think of zip code 37208 with all of its challenges. And there were only 19 detainer warrants issued in the first 6 months. Is there any explanation for that, or do you have any reason?
Could you refer me to like which? Were you?
It was a slide that had what percentage, then it had the number of cases.
And you're talking about 37208?
A circle or a bubble. Pardon?
You're talking about 37208?
Yeah, it's on, I saw on the bar graph that they only had 19.
So that particular one, that was just a month. So in that month, they had 19 cases. I'm not sure what the 5-month total would be, but that's just one month.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is, where does MDHA come out in terms of detainer warrant issued?
Yeah, for sure. I haven't been tracking them specifically, but I can tell you that while entering these, it's a name I see very rarely. I want to say maybe like 1 or 2 through the course of the month, I'll see them filed. So they are often ranked at a very low rate compared to the other ones we're seeing. And I can pull up, they may be in this month's.
And I'm very happy to hear that, because there has been a major policy shift to minimize or to basically eliminate the necessity for detainer warrants, because we are aware that, you know, they really have a devastating effect on the person.
If I could just jump in real quick, Nathan and Shannon, are you all finished with your presentation, or do we need to allow that to continue and then go back to questions?
Nathan asked for questions. For those who don't recall, he asked for questions.
Okay. Any other? Let's go back. Any other questions? Paulette, did you get your questions answered?
Yes.
Okay. Nathan, could you, Ellington Capital is a company that's based in Middle Tennessee, but Gray Star is not, and it's a division of some other company. I know you did some research on Gray Star and the other one. Could you tell us about,
GVA.
yeah, GVA, those corporations, what you've learned?
So I can't speak much about GVA. I do know they're based in Texas. They're not one of the larger private companies that operate in Nashville. I think they only own 9 properties in this area. While Graystar, they had the only research I've done is a ProPublica article that was published on their practices, specifically in Seattle, about how they operate buildings that have come under their possession. And it was just a list of kind of like grievances that the renters had. So they cut security costs, they cut maintenance costs, and they found ways to like tack on fees to the renters. So they are a company that has a history of kind of unsavory renter practices.
Okay. And then Elmington is has a lot of housing under the low-income housing tax credit program. So they're going to be, by nature, by their business model, serving primarily households at lower incomes, meaning below about $58,000 a year for a 4-person household. And they both develop and provide, and then have a property management division. So that's Elmington. And then I saw another company, Freeman. Is that Freeman Webb or just? So Freeman Webb is a huge property management company, and it's a locally based company, although they have ownership of properties in different parts of the U.S., but it's a family, and was started by Bill Freeman decades ago, and they have thousands and thousands of units under their property management division.
I have a question. When an eviction warrant is filed, and it seems like not all of these eviction judge bail, what is the block or the holdup from them going to the eviction court?
So I'm trying to think of a good way to answer that question. So I think there's a number of blocks. It's kind of hard to pick a specific one and say that's the cause for all of them. I think there's some information barriers about the type of resources that are available, especially with alternate language speaking people in the community. They may not be aware of the resources that are available. And on top of that, fees for filing cases. I want to say there's like sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm trying to like recollect. So there's just some barriers to actually like going through the process. A great resource, I recommended it before, would be Legal Aid of Middle Tennessee. They'd be able to answer those court procedure questions better than I would be able to. But I will say there are some like information barriers. There are expectation, like misunderstandings. When they see the detainer warrant, they may be concerned about the actual legal process. They may not be aware of the steps they need to take to actually show up to court or file an extension. So I would say that understanding the court system and how it actually operates is a barrier. And then on top of just like barriers to access to information and the resources, because they may not be aware of Judge Bell's legacy court.
Yeah, and just
yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, I was just gonna add a couple thoughts. First, so I think all of you know, and I think this was part of your advocacy, was that during I guess the kind of last fall, all tenants with an open hope application through Metro Action Commission were automatically being transferred to Judge Bell's court. And that was that saved a lot of people from a judgment being rendered in eviction. However, as of July 1st, the Hope portal closed. And so rental assistance they're being directed to THDA, Tennessee Housing Development Agency. And when I saw that was taking place, I was unsure about what then was the status of people with Judge Bell's legacy court. Were they still going to be automatically transferred there or not? And maybe some of you have more information, but when I called Judge Bell's office and spoke to one of her staff, they either they weren't allowed to tell me or they didn't know yet. I think it was one of those two, but it was difficult to get that information about what's going to happen there with her court. So that was just a little piece of information, not really anything concrete. But I know during that time, those open applications were allowing people to transfer directly to her court as kind of just a waiting period while the rental assistance was being processed. But I'm not sure what that is going to look like now with the NAC portal closing. Just a little tidbit.
We do know that thanks to Council Lady Zwara, that monies were allocated from this year's budget monies, I guess, or maybe from the American Rescue Plan monies. I think it was close to $3 million to ensure that tenants that do show up to court will have access to counsel. And all the data shows that when tenants coming to court have access to counsel, they have a better chance of being able to work out a plan that's workable for them and stay in their homes. And some places across the US mandate that. We don't have that here. But saving people from eviction really is heavily influenced by them having access to legal counsel when they do come to court. The other barrier, or one of the missing pieces in Nashville, is what's called they're called tenant unions, is what they're called, union, and they do a lot of outreach and what we would call community engagement or tenant engagement to make sure, particularly in places that rent more to people of lower incomes who have fewer means, they are more vulnerable than others. And so it's an outreach effort that makes sure that A, they know their rights and responsibilities, and in many places, B, they can get them access to a lawyer, which makes it less likely to be evicted for some of these unsavory practices that are used by particularly some corporate landlords, which get people trapped in, I call it the whirlpool, and kind of pulls them down.
We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. And I was just wondering, anytime I see data, that's always real helpful, but so what should be done? I mean, in the research you all did, are there any recommendations that you were able to find about what ought to be done?
Yeah, I would say really that's a question that I ask a lot when we share this with our work group members, and kind of our position with the Promise Zone is really trying to share the information, and we don't have the resources to do some of the preventative work. But I could see that as an opportunity. This data is public information. And if there were organizations that wanted to go door to door, the addresses are on the paperwork that's filed. So maybe somehow organizing events within communities of, sharing what resources are available, sharing the financial assistance that's available in these communities with higher rates of eviction. That's one thought. Yeah, that's kind of an initial thing.
And I will say, maybe it's not the most exciting answer, but during the legal aid presentation that I was attending there, I asked them like what their idea for like what one thing they would want people to know to like improve the situation that we're seeing. They talked about lobbying just to improve renters' rights here in Tennessee. Tennessee, there are very few protections on the book that actually like enforce renters' rights. So finding a ways to increase those protections would be a way to decrease what we see in evictions.
Has David at the Tennessean ever approached bad actors in the property management arena? Has he ever, revealed a particular bad actor in that? I mean, just in general, we need to approach this by focusing on the renter, making sure they're educated and understand what they're entitled to. Secondly, working with other agencies that are supplying that help. And then third, see if we can stop some of the things that are happening, which would mean we would try to get better laws passed, but also if there's a particular onerous situation, try to call that out into the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that we also hear from our work group members that are organizations working in these communities is just how expensive cost of living is right now. And from some of the communities, we hear that they just don't have sufficient funds right now. And so kind of like already has been shared, those policy changes and also just better access to rental assistance.
It's 3:15. So I don't know if we want to continue this or move on.
I think we'll move on. Shannon and Nathan, thank you for sharing this information. We really appreciate it. If anyone wants any of the slides that were used, I'm sure we can get those and have those sent out to you. So it does definitely gives us food for thought for which we never have a shortage of, but this is critical. It's easier to keep people in their homes than to help them get into housing afterwards. It's just easier. And once an eviction is on your record, it's like a black mark and it just stays there. And so the big corporations use these databases and national filtering programs. And if you don't hit their narrow model, particularly in markets like today, you're just automatically kicked out. So if you're not trying to rent from a mission-based nonprofit, in particular housing provider, like some of us worked with, where you actually did a deeper dive and tried to understand the situation, and in many cases you would rent to them, it's very, very difficult to get a landlord with large portfolios to accept you as a tenant. It's a real challenge. So that's why it's easier to keep them there than to try to find and get them into housing later. And we found that to be especially true with Riverchase. That's been the barrier that's kept a lot of those people from being able to find housing. So thank you both.
Yeah. And can you send, Shannon, I see your email address. Can you just send that to Mike, and then Mike send the slides out to all of us? Seems like that's a lot easier than 10 or 12 of us sending a request
Yes.
to Shannon.
Yes, I'll email to Mike, but I just wanted to include that in case anybody had specific questions. Feel free to send me an email that way. But yes, I'll give the slides to Mike.
Yeah. So we're so glad you came to Nashville, Shannon and Nathan. I know you're trying to make this your home so that you can stay. We'd love to keep you here. It would be great.
Yeah, thank you all for the opportunity to share. We appreciate it.
Shirley?
All right. I want to share a pertinent scripture with everyone, and this is from the Living Bible, Isaiah chapter 5, verse 8. And it says, "What sorrow for you who buy up house after house and field after field until everyone is evicted and you live alone in the land." Food for thought.
Timely. Thank you, Shirley. We're going to move next to the next item on our agenda, and Lethia Mann is going to lead that for us. We're glad to have Lethia with us. Many of you know her and about her work, and she is one of those rare native Nashvillians. Her family's been here for, I don't know, Lethia can tell you how many generations, but she has volunteered to take on this idea of inclusive neighborhoods. This came out of our planning for the year that we did back in the winter, and people really strongly believe, both people speaking at the membership meetings and within this group, that Nashville should strive for the ideal of being a city where we have neighborhoods that are inclusive, that are available and accessible and affordable for people of diverse income levels and backgrounds and cultures. And so Lethia has decided to facilitate and lead an effort around that. We thank her for that. So Lethia, I'm going to turn the time over to you. Are you there? She was. I see. Lethia, you're muted.
Well, she's also got her video turned off.
Hold on just a second.
She must have been having some technical trouble because she's just dropped off. I think she'll probably come join again in a second.
Can we shift to Martha and then come back?
Yeah, we'll do that and see if Lethia can come back with us.
Okay. I'm to give an update on the Riverchase CBA. It's been a little frustrating, as some of you know. At the last meeting that we had with CREA, the owners of Riverchase, after already agreeing to providing housing at the level of for families making 65% of the AMI. We had wanted 30%, but we had agreed with them on 65%. And then at the last meeting that we had with them, they said they would not go lower than 80% of the AMI. And AMI, area median income, that is the median income for 10 or 11 counties. I always get confused about including Davidson or not. But anyway, it's a wide area, including Williamson County. So the AMI, the median income for all these counties is like $96,000 plus. And 80% of that would be in the 70,000 range. There are a lot of people in Nashville that don't make that much money. And certainly most of the people at Riverchase, if any, made that much. And so it won't work. And we questioned Victor Young, the principal of CREA, and his response was, well, our lenders and our investors won't let us go any lower than 80%. So at that point, we walked away from the negotiations. we had to have that lower number or there was no point in talking further. Since that time, CREA has chosen to partner with the Urban League. And Clifton Harris is the president and CEO of the Urban League. They do, as you know, a lot of good work here. They address
Hello?
racial
Can
issues.
you hear me now? Hello? Can you
Yes,
hear me now?
yes, we can hear you,
Okay,
Lethia.
told me to, yes.
We moved on to my report, and we're going to come back hoping you would get back on.
Thank you.
Okay, so how about if I just go ahead and finish and then turn it over to you?
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So I'm talking about update for Riverchase. So anyway, Urban League addresses bias, does a lot of leadership development, addresses racial issues. We don't know of any time when they've worked on a CBA. And at the same time, Paulette called me and said, what's this about? What's going on? And Urban League is saying that CREA is going to provide housing at 30 to 120%. Well, I thought, well, I think Urban League doesn't understand. However, they issued a statement on July the 11th. CREA, this is from CREA, stating that they have partnered with the Urban League and that they are going to do this 30 to 120% AMI, and they're going to use LIHTC, which they had assured us they didn't want to use any government program. They didn't want to involve themselves with that, but now it looks like maybe they are open to doing that. They also are doing some other things like making a financial donation in the amount of $40,000 to McFerrin Park Neighborhood Association and $100,000 for traffic calming in the McFerrin Park neighborhood. All this sounds really good. Our question all along has been, you know, how do we guarantee 30 years of affordability? And I haven't seen that yet because as my understanding is LIHTC programs only last 15 years. Is that right, Kay?
Well, the monitoring period is 15 years, even though the affordability period could be 30 years. But if you have to think of it this way, there are 3 parcels of land. The largest parcel would stay under the ownership of the real estate development company, and they would sell, they have planned to sell, at least for the last several months, 2 of the smaller parcels to probably nonprofits. And the nonprofits would use a federal low-income housing tax credit program to develop 120 units of housing for lower income households. CREA's units that they will build under their portion of the land will be built for households at 80%, meaning $75,450 for a 4-person household, up to about $116,000. That's 120% of very median income. So you have to think of it that way. There are other problematic areas with the actual draft contract that we have studied, and the language provides a loophole, a way for the owners and future owners, and even the other party contracting, Urban League, to if they want to walk away from the conditions, they can.
And that's based on basically COVID. And yeah, I mean, it's easy for them to walk away from this deal if they choose to.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to hold their feet to the fire. So I don't want to take more time than I have been given, but thank you for that, Kay, because I didn't, you know, they had talked early on about selling that property to Salvation Army, but that didn't happen. Now and one of our concerns about that was that segregates the lower income people from the rest of the property.
Yeah, that was a priority of ours from the very beginning, which they agreed to last summer, was that that it would be a fully mixed income development. And now it's an integrated development in a large way. So Martha, one next step is Councilman Parker's.
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah, let me move on to that. Our next step, Sean Parker has called a community meeting, and that's going to be they're focusing. There's a lot of effort going into getting McFerrin Park residents there, and also former Riverchase people at that meeting. Some of us will be there, but not really to offer anything except just our support and presence, because they want to hear from those residents how they're feeling about this. But the feel is, and this is from one of the people who lives in that neighborhood, they were not happy about the new density and the height of the buildings, but they were willing to be open to that if it was going to be truly affordable. And now that affordability, long-term affordability and integrated affordability is all in question. So McFerrin Park may not be quite so happy about this project as they had been before. That meeting's going to be on the 26th, and it's going to be held at the Salvation Army. And so some of us will be there. And if that's something you're real interested in and you want to just come observe, that would be fine. It's not a meeting for CREA or anything like that. It's for that community to talk about their take on this, because Sean Parker will be, of course, bringing this to the council at some point, but he has postponed it again, given that we didn't come up with that CBA. The other thing,
what time was that meeting, Martha?
well, I had asked, and we don't have a time yet. That was supposed to come out, and we'll be getting that in an email, but I don't have a time. Do you, Mike? Have you seen a time?
I have it 6:30 marked on my calendar. I don't know where I got that, frankly.
That's the usual time, but I will confirm that.
If Lethia is going to have 15 minutes, we need to wrap this part up.
Okay, let me just say one more thing. Kay and I were tasked with talking to the Planning Commission. They were so supportive and so happy about what we had earlier. So we just wanted them to know where we are on this. And so we'll be getting some comments to them. And that's it.
Martha, one other question. As of Wednesday, July the 13th, I got this information for the Salvation Army housing navigators that there was still 6 families left in Riverchase.
Yeah, they're still working on that. And for the record, if some of you are new, CREA did provide $2,200 to residents for rent and a security deposit and helping them move, which was great. But there are a lot of people that have found they've moved out of county. Other families with unique situations are still having a hard time getting out of there. They're not going to evict anybody, but they are telling people to get out.
Thank you, Martha. Thanks so much. Lethia, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Hello. I apologize for not being on camera, but I am here. So as Kate mentioned, I chair the Inclusive Neighborhoods Committee under Affordable Housing, and we've had meetings with various community partners. We've invited a realtor to give her perspective on inclusive neighborhoods, as well as we had Jim Hawk with Neighbor to Neighbor to talk about what inclusive neighborhoods means to him, and also what he's heard when meeting with the different neighborhoods. And so regarding the different neighborhoods, their concern with inclusive neighborhoods is maintaining the character of their neighborhood as we move toward inclusivity. And so that means if they moved out because they like that rural feel, they want to keep the rural feel. If they moved because they like the urban vibe, then that's what they want to keep, even though, you know, moving and including inclusivity. And so what we wanted to talk about today was to hear from the members of NOAH as to when we say inclusive neighborhoods, what does that mean to you? Because our goal is to define what inclusive neighborhoods means for NOAH and then present that idea to the community to get their support. So that is the question that we want to propose today is, again, what does inclusive neighborhoods mean to you? And we invite you all to chime in.
Okay, so this is where we'd like to hear and record, or so I can note comments from everybody and see what people feel inclusive neighborhoods mean to you. Let me just share a little bit about what one of the people we spoke with, Tiffany Capehart is her name, shared with us in particular about what it means to her. And Tiffany and her husband Eric live in Bordeaux. Tiffany is from Louisville, Kentucky. Eric grew up here. They met at TSU. They wanted to stay and raise their family here. Tiffany is by training an urban planner. She worked for the Metro Planning Department for a long, long time. And Eric is a counselor, and they're an African-American young family. And when they did, for the first time, they did buy small townhomes on the other side of town. But what was important to Tiffany, what she said was, as a woman of color with a young family, I want to live in a neighborhood where I feel that I am welcomed, my family is welcomed, and I'm accepted. That was what came out of her mouth. So I wanted to share that with you just to get us started. And we'd like to hear what other people feel, think about what it means to them, what inclusivity and what does an inclusive neighborhood mean to you?
Does it help us to be able to like call on people and just give everybody 15 seconds or something, or you just want to open the floor?
Well, if nobody speaks, then I'll start calling on people.
Okay.
For me, an inclusive neighborhood is one in which there is a welcoming and affirming attitude toward residents of all income, ethnic, racial varieties. An inclusive neighborhood is also committed to the concept of community and all that that implies.
Well, I can speak about what our neighborhood no longer has, and that's, for the most part, children. Lots of families have moved away. We used to see kids all over on the streets here and up and down on their bikes. And most of those families, their little houses have been torn down and big ones have been put up. So I miss kids. And I'll also say, it's important to me that LGBTQ people be welcomed. And I feel very welcomed in East Nashville.
Good. Thank you, Martha.
I live, am I muted? No. I live in Crieve Hall, and Crieve Hall doesn't have much of a variety of housing options. They're mainly quarter to half acre lots with 20,000 square foot houses, and they've gotten pretty expensive. So I don't think we're at all inclusive in terms of income. Now, Martha, we're very inclusive when it comes to gay families. I've always had somebody gay on one side of me, so kind of the word got out somehow. We're inclusive there, and it doesn't matter whether you're black or white or whatever. We seem to be inclusive, but other than that, I don't find that we're very inclusive at all. And I think part of the problem, we don't have a variety of housing options.
For me, sooner or later, you have to figure out a way to negotiate from where we are, where we want to be. And my guess is it takes more than subjective descriptions of what we want. We have to get objective about it and talk about numbers. For me, maybe a starting place is that a neighborhood, an inclusive neighborhood, should reflect an area at large. And for this case, let's just say Davidson County. You know, a certain percentage of people of color should be in an inclusive neighborhood. And since, unfortunately, color tends to also describe how much money people make, that if we could mirror the larger county percentage, it would come closer to also mirroring. If we did that in race, it would also, I think, come close to mirroring the income spread.
It would. There's a direct correlation.
Yeah.
My name is Alice, and I live in Lebanon. But I'm a big participant of NOAH for Housing and Criminal Justice Task Force. The neighborhood that I live in is fairly new. I moved here in 2014. I did see more children, as you mentioned, Martha. But now that the homes have gone up so high, I rarely see families out here. Young families with children. A lot of we used to have homes when they went up for sale, they was sold right the same day, and now it's taking longer for homes to sell. Our homes area here is, I wouldn't say that it's inclusive. We have people here that make a lot of money, so it keeps out a lot of people that make, say, $50,000, $60,000 a year. It's not inclusive the way I would like for it to be. I thought that it would grow more, but Lebanon, some parts of Lebanon, the housing is growing, but in my community, it's pretty stagnant. As far as different people of races that live here, it's very stagnant. It's mostly geared toward people that have a lot of money. And the selling of the homes are truly, to me, entirely too expensive. Just in the past year, they were 300, now they're gone up to 400,000. So it's not affordable to me at all where I live. And I don't like it. We are not allowed to rent. We're not allowed to rent any homes here. So that's what the home HOA is telling us, that we can't rent to anyone. So it keeps out a lot of families that are not ready to rent, or either rent with option to buy. They cannot live here. And I don't think that's inclusive. That's weeding out a lot of people. It really is.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Pat McDonald mentioned Creve Hall a moment ago, and I don't live that far away, and I am in a similar neighborhood, single family neighborhood. And part of the problem with doing what Martha or what Pat would like to do in bringing more types of housing and more incomes and so forth, there's got to be a rezoning.
Yeah.
And so many neighborhoods are absolutely adamant about not having rezonings.
Yes.
Courtney Johnson had something presented to her within the last year up at Trousdale and Harding Place, and took the opportunity to look at a larger rezoning area, not just the parcels. And it was firmly rejected by the community. They don't want anything other than what they've got. So it isn't just a matter of convincing people to move there. It's convincing the people who are there to create more opportunities to do the things that Pat and others have suggested.
Thank you, Ed.
I see Kaki has her hand up.
Kaki?
Yeah, I guess what makes inclusive, what was required for that in my mind is just, we have to have some shifting mental models. away from the sense of individual well-being and individual housing, and to more of a shared, a concept that our well-being is interwoven, and therefore our housing should be interwoven. Our the income disparity doesn't keep us woven together. So a real sense of belonging. And I think that also has to do with housing design. As long as we're designing homes that are individual in nature, apartments that don't, create community space, then we continue to see ourselves as individual instead of a collective.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. We can look to Europe for a different model for that. Thank you. Anyone else?
Do we have more time, Kay?
Yep, we do, Lethia.
Okay.
I would like to add the only thing I haven't heard mentioned, I've agreed with most of the comments, is accessibility issues. I think a welcoming and an inclusive community also welcomes folks who have accessibility issues. That we would have to think about accessibility to mass transportation and the workforce.
In terms of accessibility, are you thinking in terms of access to good public transportation, close to work? Is that what you're thinking?
That plus, housing options for people with disabilities, and that would also influence income.
Okay. Thank you.
One of the things that has bothered me some too is just thinking about the county as a whole. There's some statistic, I think the Chamber of Commerce brought it to our attention, that 11,000 people left Davidson County last year. So we don't know where those folks went, and we can't prove exactly why they left, but I'd be willing to bet the housing costs are part of it.
Oh, yeah.
So where are we in terms of what kind of community do we want to create? Do we want to have a community where people that are of modest income get pushed out of the county? Is that what we're wanting? Going back to my faith, that doesn't sound like the kingdom of God to me. It sounds like a desecration.
Yeah, I know someone mentioned Minneapolis in the state of Minnesota. I don't know if Shannon's still with us, but she's from Rochester, Minnesota. And Minnesota has been more progressive in terms of actions that they've taken as a state, and also within the state, cities like Minneapolis that have gone as far now as to actually ban single family zoning homes anymore because there's such a need. They're trying to house the citizens of the city and figure out how to do that. And so they've gone that far in changing their zoning requirements to try to mandate it. I think to get back to Kaki's point, it really requires a shift in how we think about our relationship to each other, and this idea of individualism in the US. Why in some ways it can be a positive, but in many, many ways it hurts us. Because it's not my problem and I want to live the way I want to live, and I move to this neighborhood because this is the kind of neighborhood I want to live in. But in the meantime, we have, if we say that our values are, we value our people and our residents and everyone matters, then how are we going to demonstrate that and make the changes starting with our own mindsets that need to be made to cause this shift? And this is why this idea is taking on called social housing, which is almost a profanity if you use that in some circles in the South. But it really is the idea of going back to, I think it was 1948, when this international commitment was made that everybody should have access to housing. Everybody, that's a basic human need and right. Everything, we have to start there. It's going to require a shift to go back to that. If that's what we believe, then as Jerry says, what are the practical kinds of changes that can be done and that we need to get our arms around as a community to make that happen?
We are past 3:45, so I don't know if we want to move on or continue.
Has everybody that wants to share what their view is of inclusive neighborhoods been able to do that?
I've just got a comment, just as far as me personally.
Okay.
I mean, I grew up in Nashville, been in Nashville all my life, and I got a bunch of nieces and nephews, and none of them live in Davidson County because I can't afford it.
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah, and it's sad. So we're losing our families. Yeah. We're losing
thank you all.
Valuable assets.
We're losing a lot of young families. I don't know where they are going, but we are losing a lot of young families. If you're retired, of course, you have a steady monthly income, but the way the jobs are right now, it's very difficult to have a job and afford an apartment. Just for instance, I tried to order a pizza last night from Pizza Hut, and the guy told me that it would take 3 to 4 hours to get a pizza because he didn't have any employees. The ones he did have had been there since 8 o'clock that morning. He said, so I advise you not to order a pizza from us. You know, something as simple as a pizza.
And that's what I've run
can't get that done.
Yeah. I run into that all of the restaurants. Every restaurant you go to, they have staffing issues.
Yes.
I think
All of
Lethia,
them.
I think Lethia is trying to say something.
Yeah.
She's the chair of this piece.
Two things. One, I had that same experience Friday trying to order a pizza from Pizza Hut. They said, we're not taking any more orders. We're just swamped. But in addition to, you can see how the lack of housing is affecting our employment. But we do need to move on to the next section. I appreciate you all's comments. And as I said, what we're going to do is compile what inclusive neighborhood means to NOAH and then present that idea to the community to see if we can have some actions toward moving forward in inclusive neighborhood.
Thank you, Lethia. And
thank you.
And thank you, Mike, for the scripture from Jeremiah. It's in the chat. There we go. All right, Shirley.
All right, well, we're about ready to wrap it up, but we want to look at some future action items. And the first one is that the Chamber of Commerce is having 2 quarterly meetings, and the NOAH, they're inviting the NOAH Affordable Housing Task Force, and also the NOAH Education Task Force is going to be involved in this. But this is a great volunteer opportunity for volunteers to attend the 2 quarterly meetings, and they begin on September the 7th, and they start at 12:30 p.m. And for the volunteers, you'll come back and report back to the Affordable Housing Task Force. So any volunteers, you can volunteer now, or you can get with Mike later if you'd like to volunteer to serve on these 2 quarterly meetings.
Yeah, and really what I found out, because someone reached out to me the end of the week, the meetings are supposed to occur, and I don't know how long they will go on, once a month, but they're not going to meet in August. And they, Liza Ramaj, who's with the Education Task Force, and some people from the chamber thought it would be efficient to include someone from the Affordable Housing Task Force. And so really, we'd like a representative to go to those meetings, the next 2 meetings. We're not going to commit you to life or ask you to commit to a long-term commitment. Listen in, they're by Zoom, and bring back to us information that you've learned from those meetings, or if they ask you questions, then bring back the questions and we'll try to get answers for them. That's what we're looking for. So it'd be September and October, one in September and then another in October.
Are they both on Wednesday in the middle of the day?
Yep, Pat, they
Yes.
are.
I have a conflict then. I would love to go, but
Okay.
I might mention real quickly that these are some regular meetings that our education task force has set up with some of the chamber people, mainly around education. But then our folks thought it might make sense to add us in as housing. And we've actually, a couple of us have been to, I think, 2 of these meetings so far. So we're just trying to spread the wealth here a little bit and make sure everybody gets a chance to, you don't have to pretend to be an expert or anything. You just listen, ask questions, say what you think.
I would like to participate in that, Mike. Alice Anderson.
Okay, Alice, thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Okay. Any other volunteers to attend the 2 meetings?
I forgot to ask you, what day did you say the meetings are, Shirley?
September the 7th. And that's just a September meeting. I don't think we have yet the October date, but that's for the September 7th meeting at 12:30 p.m. Thank you, Alice.
You're welcome.
Okay. And if you think later on you want to volunteer to attend the meeting, just let Mike, Kay, or myself know.
Yeah, Shirley, I have an announcement. It's not necessarily an action. Open Table Nashville has begun the effort to establish the alliance, the Tennessee Alliance for Housing and Homelessness, which means they're going to be reaching out. Well, they've already started this, reaching out across the state to begin to build this effort to support and push back, quite frankly, against terrible laws like the legislature passed this spring, but to create a better environment, particularly within the legislature itself, around support for affordable housing needs across the state. And so I see 20 people that are with us today, and my sense is each of you 20 people may know at least one person in another part of the state, if not more. So this is an opportunity for you to help in the effort of Open Table by connecting with family members or friends and other people in parts of the state, particularly people of faith, to this effort so that we can support Open Table in beginning this movement across the state. I don't have, I'll ask Mike when he sends out some other information. I'll ask him to send out early this week a link that you can click to go on and sign up, and then you can just forward that link to your friends and family in other parts of the state, because we, in order for us to be effective with so many of our challenging housing challenges in Tennessee, we must connect with people in our rural counties, because our legislature is primarily made up of rural parts of the state, and they're not necessarily friendly on a regular basis to what we're trying to do in urban areas, and they'll push back and preempt laws that we pass locally.
Hey, they're looking for other organizations, not necessarily individuals, correct?
People affiliated with other organizations, yes.
Okay.
So like if you know someone, like I know people in Blount County, one of them is a member of the local county commission. Another is affiliated with First United Methodist Church. So I'm, and you know, have the same thing up in Washington County. So I'm sending it to them so that they can get their organizations or entities that they're affiliated with on board.
We've got like 1 minute and I see Ed Branding has his hand up.
Hey, you'll probably get tired of hearing me say this because this is about the third Zoom call we've been on where I've mentioned it. But I go back to the THDA conference where the Weakley County people and the Jefferson County people are having the same problems on their scale as we're having in Nashville. So when we work with people in the rural legislature, we need to go from a frame point, from a viewpoint of this is their problem or fixing to be problem or becoming their problem. And we need to be allies in this rather than adversaries, city mouse, county, country mouse.
Yes.
So in terms of working with them, we need to think of what are their problems that we can help them solve while they're helping us solve ours.
Exactly. That's a good point, Ed. And yeah, you have to approach it that way. I'll emphasize that to my colleagues there.
Are we ready for the evaluation? Or just anything else? Well, we always want to evaluate what we do, because if it was worth doing, it was worth evaluating. Now, is it okay for us to run about 4 minutes overtime? Is that okay with everybody? Well,
Yes.
For the first part of the thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. For the first part of the evaluation, put in the chat your feeling word as you're leaving. You know, just how are you feeling? Not a lengthy paragraph about what we should have done, such and such, but are you feeling good? Are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling powerful? What Martha is feeling good to go. And if Martha's feeling good to go, I'm ready to go with her. All right. Jerry Park is encouraged. Let's see. Pat McDonald's informed. Alice Anderson's feeling powerful. Now that's why are you feeling powerful, Alice?
I believe this task force is on the move, and we are really working hard to get things done for residents. We're very much concerned about affordable housing. I know I am. We get disgusted, but with getting disgusted, it brings out more of a challenge to do better things, to think more, to work harder. So I feel empowered. I feel powerful about what we're doing.
Thank you, Alice. Ann Carr, you're feeling determined. Can you say just a tiny bit more about that?
Well, I think you have to be determined because there's so many forces out there arraigned that are going opposite to the way we want to go. So if you're not determined, you won't get anything done.
Amen.
Well,
it's going to take a long time.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. While we're on the determined subject, Dana Robinson said informed and determined. You want to give us any 10 seconds more on that? Well, you're on mute.
I don't know, affordable housing, a better apartment for me to live in for my nephew, who's obviously he could be considered disabled, but he's not on SSI. He worked for Amazon, so there's got to be somewhere for all of us to live.
So it's personal. That's part of what I think you're saying is it's very personal.
Yes. So I'm here for the fight. I have to
you.
work, so I can't at 12:30 meeting.
There's a
Or,
lot more.
I
There's
mean-
a lot more to do.
Okay.
And we're glad
I
you're
mean,
here.
if you have a 6:30 or if you have a 6:30 meeting, I might be able to catch one on my way home from work.
Okay,
but-
well, we're glad you're here.
but-
So the second part of the
Okay.
evaluation, just very quickly, is how did our meeting work? Did the agenda seem appropriate? Did our task force leaders get us through it? Shirley, what do you think? You helped lead this thing and you helped plan it. How did we do?
I think very good, considering all the information that was presented. And I think it's a lot for, give us some food for thought and where we need to go next.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything about the performance of the meeting? Did we get stuck on anything? Did anybody dominate?
I'll offer an observation from years of being on this. When I first came on, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, meetings then, we were struggling to find ourselves, I think. And we didn't have our thing, smoothed out and together. Now these meetings are very professional. They are organized. They don't really waste much time. We have technical issues. We're always going to have that, but it's impressive. It's encouraging to be a part of this, and it's a good hour and a half spent.
Okay, thank you. And Margaret Blair added excellent meeting, lots of information and good participation. The third part of any
I
part of that.
particularly liked the scriptures that were thrown out. They were really
Yeah,
helpful to
that's
me.
very nice.
Yeah.
Good. I'm real glad that those connected. The third part of our evaluation is tension. And we do want some tension in meetings. Otherwise, you don't do anything different afterwards than you did before. So where was the tension here? Or was there any?
Riverchase.
Yep. Yep. Tension about Riverchase. Anything else? I felt a little tension around the eviction stuff because they gave us a bunch of facts, but then I need to know, so what do we do about it? What are, I think it's helpful to know the facts, but anybody else tension?
My
Yeah,
tension, my tension is around knowing that in order to get some questions answered, you have to have people with knowledge. They are willing to come together to brainstorm and invest time and brain power to come up with solutions. So we have 2 people that volunteered a year, and they had a very, very strict focus. It was to gather this information and push it out. Now their term ends with AmeriCorps, and there's no really promise that under the Promise Zone initiative in Nashville, that any further steps around solutions will be taken, because it's run by a very, very tiny group of people with limited time and resources. So then if not them, then who comes together to it's another work project, so to speak.
Okay.
To make that happen, or to influence others to make that happen.
Kay, I was thinking the same thing about, we got and was described the problem, but now we've got to come up with solutions.
Yes.
Thank you. And then we need to draw this to a close. Ed, do you have a 10-second comment?
Just that I'm on the Promise Zone committees with Nathan and Shannon. And one of the frustrations is what was just mentioned, and that is there aren't a lot of tools to do much of anything with this. And it gets back to the state legislature and convincing them that the tools that we need or the tools that they need or we're going to to need, but some things have to change at the state level.
Well, let's move on to the last part of the evaluation, and that is political learning. And as you know, that does not mean who you vote for. It means where are we in our work? And I want to grab onto the theme of our banquet a second, on the road to justice. On the road to justice. We've been on that road since we began. Sometimes you run into some roadblocks. Sometimes it's a little more smooth sailing. It's always interesting. And from what Ed was talking about, what we're looking at is NOAA is the vehicle on the road. We are the vehicle, you know, and we need to be able to make an impact on the state legislature. That's why we're linking up with our sister organizations in Memphis and Chattanooga. We need to be able to make an impact here, but we are not powerless. We are powerful on that road. We just have to claim it. So that would be my conclusion, my political learning. And I was wondering if Reverend Thompson would dismiss us with a prayer.
Okay, let us pray. God, the work of justice is before us with respect to housing. We continue to ask for your guidance, your inspiration, and your power, that we may make Nashville a place where anyone can live and afford. Now dismiss us as we continue to do the work of justice. And this we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Bye, everyone.
Really good to see everybody.
You too. Hope to see you soon.